For generations, this has been Newcastle's back garden, a place for picnics, for music and for a quiet walk. This is Exhibition Park, a green oasis of around 15 hectares right next to the city centre. But what if I told you that beneath your feet lies a forgotten story of a global spectacle? That this quiet park was once the stage for two of the biggest events in the city's history, attracting millions of people and transforming Newcastle forever. This is a story of how a humble field for bulls became the window to the world. So Howard, let's begin. As we're walking around, we know places we walk every day. The familiar paths, the lake, the old bandstand, but these are landmarks or echoes, ghosts of the past, so grand it's almost unbelievable. A time when this park wasn't just a park, but a temporary city of palaces, railways and wonders drawn from across the globe, all built on a scale that Newcastle has never seen before. To understand how it happened, we need to go back in time before the name Exhibition Park even existed, when the land had a much simpler and muddier purpose. Before the grand archways and shimmering palaces, this land was simply known as the Bull Park. There was a section of a much larger ancient town moor, common land that has belonged to the people of Newcastle since 13th century, and for hundreds of years it was a primary function, was exactly what the name suggests. It was a grazing field, the place where the city bulls were kept. It was a rustic, functional patch of land on the edge of a rapidly growing industrial city. The first seeds of change were sown in the Victorian year. The Town Moor Improvement Act of 1870 was a pivotal moment, designated areas of the moor specifically for public recreation, including the land that would become our park. The idea of a formal park, a green lung for the city's workers, was taking shape. To mark its new purpose, a bandstand was built around about 1875. It was a simple, elegant structure designed for brass bands to entertain the public on a Sunday afternoon. No one could probably imagine that the modest bandstand would one day be the sole survivor of the colossal World Fair. For a while, that was the park story. A pleasant but unremarkable recreation ground. Built in 1886, a proposal was put forward by the Northern England Institute of Mining and Mechanical Engineers. They wanted to host a major exhibition to showcase the industrial might of the region. The Mayor of Newcastle suggested a location, the recreation ground known as Bull Park. The plan was ambitious, and it was about to get a whole lot bigger, thanks to a very important royal anniversary. In 1887, Britain was in the grip of Jubilee fever, celebrating 50 years of Queen Victoria's reign. The planned industrial exhibition was merged with the celebrations, becoming the Royal Jubilee exhibition. Suddenly, Bull Park was thrust onto the national stage. For the first time, the park was completely transformed. Temporary buildings sprang up, housing exhibits on mining, engineering and industry. There was a theatre, art galleries, sprawling gardens, and one of the most talked about features was a full-scale replica of the old medieval Tyne Bridge, a structure that had been lost in the Great Flood in 1771. It was a stunning piece of historical reconstruction, allowing visitors to literally walk through a piece of Newcastle's past.
Yeah, but I won't be able to.
The event was a staggering success, Over just a few months it attracted over 2 million visitors, with the Duke of Cambridge himself performing the opening ceremony. People flocked from all over the country to see the wonders of industry and celebrate the Jubilee. The park has proven it could host an event on a massive scale, yet when the crowds left and the temporary structures were taken down, something strange happened, or rather nothing happened. Despite the grandeur and national attention, the name Exhibition Park didn't quite stick. Locals, with their characteristic Tyneside practicality, largely went back to calling it Bull Park. The bandstand remained a lone remainder of the huge festival that had surrounded it. It would take another even bigger event, born not from celebration but from desperation, to change the park's name and its identity forever. 42 years later, the world was a different place. The roaring 20s were on the verge of ending with a catastrophic Wall Street crash, and the Great Depression was tightening its grip on the world. Nowhere was this felt more keenly than in industrial northeast England. Shipyards were falling silent, coal mines were closing, and unemployment was soaring. The region needed a shot in the arm, a symbol of hope, and a bold advertisement to the world that the Northeast was still open for business. The answer was in 1929, a Northeast Coal Exhibition. This wasn't just an exhibition, it was a defiant roar in the face of economic hardship. On the 14th of May 1929, the Prince of Wales, the future King Edward VIII, opened the exhibition to the public. What visitors saw was nothing short of a fantasy city. The architect, William and T.R. Milburn from Sunderland, were the specialist in designing a spectacular art cinema, and they brought all their theatrical flair to the project. Visitors were greeted by two towering Egyptian-style pylons. They could wander through the colossal Palace of Engineering and the Palace of Industries, showcasing everything from shipbuilding to the newfangled home appliances. There was a massive stadium, a grand concert venue called Festival Hall, and even the thrilling towering scenic railway that swooped over the park. The exhibition was a hotbed of innovation. It featured one of the first large purpose-built car parks to handle the new age of motor transport. It was here that two brand, now household names, were famously showcased to the public: Smith's Crisps and the popular Newcastle Exhibition Ale. But not all exhibitions had aged so well. In reflection of the colonial attitude of the time, the site also included the so-called African village, complete with the more than 100 Senegalese inhabitants who were expected to live their lives as a spectacle for visitors. It was a stark and uncomfortable reminder of the era's mindset, a detail only lost in the grand narrative of the industrial pride. For 6 months the park was the centre of the nation's attention, and by the time it closed in October 1929, an incredible 4.37 million people had passed through its gates, and each 1 millionth visitor was presented with a gold watch. The event was a monumental success, a beacon of light in times, and this time the name stuck. A temporary city was dismantled in 1930, but the site was officially and permanently renamed Exhibition Park. However, one magnificent building was saved from the bulldozers. While the Palaces of Engineering and Industry was built as a magnificent but temporary sheds, the Palace of Arts was different. Designed by the Milburn brothers, this Art Deco masterpiece was constructed with a more permanent materials, including a securely housed valuable artwork loaned for the exhibition. Its elegant Egyptian-influenced facade and solid construction saved it from demolition. And so the building began a second life in 1934. It reopened as a museum of science and engineering. For decades it was here that the generations of Geordie children marvelled at the history of the region's ingenuity. It did house the Turbinia for a while before it was moved down to the Discovery Museum. And by the 1980s, the Science Museum had moved and the building became a National Military Vehicle Museum. That's what I can remember it as, which it remained until it closed in 2006. And for nearly a decade, this architectural drawl, the last relic of the great 1929 exhibition, sat empty and derelict. There was fears for its safety, but it then came its most recent and perhaps most popular transformation. In 2016, after a major refurbishment, the Palace of Arms reopened as home of Wylam breweries. Today, the hall that once displayed priceless art and groundbreaking steamships now hosted a microbrewery, a tap room, and a perfectly adapted to the change in tastes of the city it was built to celebrate. So if you walk through Exhibition Park today, where are the other ghosts of these great exhibitions? They hide in plain sight. Of course you have the Palace of Arts, now alive with the sound of the Wylam Brewery. And not far from it you'll find the resilient Victorian bandstand, the only structure left from the 1887 Jubilee exhibition, still sitting in its original spot. The Boaton Lake, a beloved feature of the park, was central part of a 1929 layout, though it was originally created from reservoirs built to supply the city with clean water in the 19th century. The tennis courts and croquet lawns also followed the layout and designed from the 1929 exhibition. And that's the old Victorian bandstand. This park holds so many memories from the millions who visited the exhibitions to the generations who have enjoyed it since. What does Exhibition Park mean to you? Do you have your own memories of the old Science Museum? Or did you visit the brewery or festivals today? Share your stories and what you love about the park in the comments below. It's fascinating to see how its history continues to evolve with people who used to use it, and there are many that still do. So remember, the next time you take a walk through the park and over the grass, what lies beneath your feet, the history, the crowds, the noise, and enjoy it and revel it. It's a lovely day, the day we've enjoyed a little walk around. If you like this sort of video, don't forget, hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, hit the notification bell for future videos, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.